In class, the professor is lecturing. He suddenly notices a male student helping a girl remove something dirty from her hair. The professor flicks his finger. A mysterious force suddenly appears in the classroom. Instantly everyone is frozen in place. Only the girl Li Dan is unaffected. She nervously looks at the people around her, suddenly understanding what's happening. The professor strides over to her. Li Dan immediately explains, "It's because I had something on my head just now." The nine-tailed fox says he's not angry, then slowly leans down, says he just wants to look at her up close. Then he looks at the frozen senior and twists his head 180 degrees. Men never admit they're jealous. Time instantly resumes. Only the senior feels something's off. When did his head turn that way? The nine-tailed fox thought he could stop all this, but he doesn't know. After school, Li Dan suddenly discovers a red thread on her hand. Could this be the destiny thread the nine-tailed fox told her about? Last night, the power suddenly went out at home. Li Dan accidentally tripped and bumped right into the nine-tailed fox's abdomen. The fox bead from 600 years of cultivation suddenly went into Li Dan's mouth. The nine-tailed fox is instantly stunned, not knowing what to do. Li Dan thinks the bead's already in her stomach. What can be done? The nine-tailed fox tells her to close her eyes. He'll help her get it out. During the process of retrieving the bead, the two get a little closer, so they open up to each other. Li Dan says she happened to end up working part-time with the senior. The nine-tailed fox tells Li Dan, "The mountain god tied a red destiny thread on you in the senior's hands. Now she can actually see that invisible red thread, so she tries to tear it off, but it won't break at all." She anxiously goes to find scissors, but accidentally misses a step, then falls hard. The nine-tailed fox happens to come by and sees Li Dan injured. He immediately tries to help her up. Suddenly he's frozen. Then a man appears. He tells Li Dan, "Don't you know there are serious consequences for playing with fate designated by the gods?" Li Dan asks, "So my future is already decided?" The mountain god says he can't predict all futures, but can let you see what will happen. Then Li Dan closes her eyes. She sees various sweet moments between herself and the senior. At this moment the nine-tailed fox begins using willpower to break free from being frozen, then pulls Li Dan up. The mountain god tells him to relax, just letting her dream for a moment, and reminds the nine-tailed fox, "You're just a mythical beast. You have no right to choose your own destiny." That night the nine-tailed fox leans close to Li Dan, says he's so afraid of losing her to someone else. Li Dan tells him not to worry. He's overthinking it, but she doesn't know. Between her and the senior, the nine-tailed fox is desperately pulling on that red thread, but this damn thread really has magical power. The next day, after school, Li Dan sees the nine-tailed fox waiting for her. She excitedly runs forward, suddenly tripped by a red thread. Just then, the senior happens to pass by and catches her. Li Dan sees it's the senior, immediately pulls away instinctively. She knows it must be the red thread's doing. The senior offers to give her a ride to the dinner gathering, but Li Dan says she's riding with someone else. When the senior asks whose car, the nine-tailed fox comes over and says, "My car." The senior curiously asks Li Dan, "Why would you ride in the professor's car?" The nine-tailed fox doesn't know how to explain. Li Dan immediately breaks the awkwardness, publicly says they're dating, but the senior says she can date anyone, just not him. Li Dan doesn't understand what he means. Before the senior can finish, the nine-tailed fox pulls Li Dan away. In class, the more Li Dan thinks about it, the more something feels off. At this moment the female teacher is coming out of the nine-tailed fox's office. The nine-tailed fox looks at her with ambiguous eyes. Suddenly he notices Li Dan in the back watching him. He suddenly feels guilty and pushes the female teacher away. Then he does something unbelievable to the female teacher.